My name is John Passfield, and I'm going to read from my novel, Eleonora Duse, Let Me Have My Wings. The title of this reading will be Eleonora Duse, Video 10, An Interview with Duse, Part 3. Here's the cover of the novel, Eleonora Duse, Let Me Have My Wings, a novel by John Passfield, a photograph of the historical Eleonora Duse. Eleonora Duse spends her whole career producing, directing, and acting in the great female roles of the theatrical repertoire. She claims that when she's not on stage, she does not exist. A poet publishes a novel in which an aging actress's only role is to be a young poet's muse. The publication of the novel is a crisis for La Duse, as a fictional portrait of a pathetic, clinging female threatens to fill the void and become her personal myth in the public mind. But her greatest fear is that the imagery of the poet's book will alter the way she thinks of herself. I read the first 10 chapters of this interview between the actress La Duse and a young reporter in 2 previous videos. I'll read the final 6 chapters of interview, chapters 11 to 16, in this video reading. So let me just find page 86 here, which will be chapter 11. Here we are. So she's speaking to a young reporter. You don't hear him, you just hear her. And there's some question, if you read the whole novel, as to whether there actually is a reporter. This is a memory novel. She's remembering her whole life. She's remembering her relationship with the poet when they were on friendlier terms. And she's remembering an interview. But is it actually a memory, or is she just imagining an interview? Because she doesn't really want to give an interview. It's almost a non-interview. In terms of her attitude towards this young reporter and towards the whole idea of talking about not only this book, which she claims she hasn't read, but talking about her whole life. She's never done that in public before. She's been the mystery lady, except through the roles that she plays on stage. So chapter 11, page and a half or so, then we go into the interview. Oh, I'm trying so hard to get to know you. I'm trying to look at your mind through the holes in your eyes, trying to look at all the creatures that swim in your skull. Ever look through a microscope? Astonishing what you see, all these tiny creatures eking out a life. Hold a lens up to your head, a very powerful lens. I promise you, you'll be surprised at what you see. Another page of imagery, and we get to this. The human being is amazing. We fool ourselves over and over again. We live inside, but we think we live outside. We stumble through the forest. We plunge in fear down the waterfall. We swim for our lives when the lifeboat springs a leak. But the greatest storms and sunsets, the greatest explosions and quietest songs are all right here, behind these 2 eyes and between these 2 ears. A couple of pages of imagery we're leaving out here, and we get to the interview again. I'm an actress. I play many roles. Ever wonder what such a thing could mean? I have been inside the minds of all the greatest women of the past. The women imagined by all the greatest artists. I've lived my life inside these women's skulls. But here's the catch, if you want to know. Here's the thing that is hard to grasp. All the writers of great female roles have been great men. What good does it do me, this playing of roles? What do I know that no one else knows? Do I know myself better than if I'd never been on the stage? Do I know myself less than if I'd sold the tickets or swept the floor? What does an actress know that no one else can possibly know? Someday I shall play the nurse, Juliet's nurse, when I get a few more laugh lines on my brow. Sit in the sun and think my thoughts against the dovecote wall. Well, that's chapter 11, the interview. Into chapter 12, page and a half of imagery about the rest of her life. And we get to, it's important for me to feel that you understand me. How could you write with conviction If you do not, that is why I've been rattling on in this vein. Everything that I have said has come from a very deep place. That is why I've asked you to sit so close to me. That is why I've been looking so deeply into your eyes. You're not the kind of person to trample on a flower. You're a person, I'm sure, who has talent. Surely you yearn to do more than smear ink across a page. You ever had the urge to write a book? Then we go a few pages further on to this. Oh, I can never be a journalist. I feel so painful when I act in a superficial play. Surely you, with your sensitivity, with your compassion, with your insight into the agonies of the world, soar above the petty nature of your trade. There's a thought that I've had. This thought has grown in me in the time I have spent alone. In my apartment here in Venice, in my late-night gondola rides, in my dressing room when I'm exhausted by the life that I live on stage. That I could right the wrongs of what has been done to me by the writing of someone else. I've always shunned publicity. I'm not a person when I'm not on stage. If I'm not Hedda or Nora or Rebecca, I do not exist. Speaking to the public in my own voice is repugnant to me. It is hanging my washing out on the line, as if I am standing naked on the street. But such is your persistence, such is the quality of your writings that I have read, that for this once only for this once, I will make an exception. I have a proposal for you, that we two form what might be called a conspiracy. But in this case, a conspiracy of angels, bringing the truth, bringing the Gospels, bringing the news. That we tell the story of these three people, of Sarah, of D'Annunzio, of me. That we tell your readers the news behind the news. So, take your pencil out of your pocket, or your pen, or your stiletto, or whatever sharp weapon you tend to use. Dip it in lamb's milk rather than poison, as you usually do. And now we move into chapter 13, the interview. You wrote 4 plays for me. Each was shallower than the last. I took a turn at being Sarah. Small performances and large applause. Come closer. Move your chair closer to me. Lean forward. This is not for the ears of the butler or the maid. Nothing of what I say must appear in print under my name. Do you hear? I forbid you to attribute to me one single word. If you write any of this, it must be under your own name, as your observations after failing to get me to talk. You read my eyes, as you could not hear my voice. It will be your opinion, your interpretation, your surmise as to what I was thinking. The great lady, the great actress, the great Duse retained her secrets on the topic of concern. Write what you like, but never attribute a word to me. Put your hand on your heart. Do it now, before I speak. Not to tell, not to tell, not to tell. I forbid you. I forbid you on your life. You know, he talked the novel to me. He talked the novel, you see. At that time, he told me he hadn't written it down. All the time he was planning the novel. That is the time when we were hatching our Italian theater scheme. Sarah was the older muse, and I was the younger muse. He was inspired by her former glory, you see. We wanted to build a theater She was the older muse whose time had passed, the inspiration for it all, and I was the younger muse who would work the spell. It's bait and switch, my friend, bait and switch. The oldest scam at the country fair, the oldest, most ancient ruse. And you fell for it with ease. You fell for it with ease. But don't feel badly, my friend. Do not feel ill at ease, for I, who looked him in the eye, who scrutinized him night and day, fell for it too. I felt a knife enter my back between the fourth and fifth vertebrae. Someone told me that Sarah had signed to perform his new play. I denied the rumor, of course, but my heart skipped a beat as I read the offending passage in my faltering French. He had stabbed me in the back. He had offered the play to Sarah, our play, our child, our Grail. Sarah, the darling of the French, Sarah who owned a theater in Paris, Sarah who held so many reviewers in her hand. He wanted to take the world by storm. The theater world was English and French. What were his plans for Italian theater? It was all I could do to take another breath. I willed those plays to be the plays that I wanted them to be. I rose to my greatest heights. I rose above my own possibilities. I tried to make those plays the equal of Shakespeare and Racine. I fused my own blood and sweat and sputum with the playwright's paltry words. Excuse me. I lifted D'Annunzio up by the scruff of the neck and held him up for all the world to admire. I shall make this man a god, or I shall die. Take from me what you will. I kneel at your altar with my neck exposed to the sword. Make these plays and this man the equal of Aeschylus, of Sophocles, of Euripides. To this, ye gods, I pledge my immortal soul. Take from me what you will. Find in my innards that essence that came to me from your hands. Leave me broken here on the altar of the gods. But alas, it was not to be. A sow's ear is a sow's ear. There's many a woman who willed a man to be what such a puny man could never be. And so, as you know, his plays were failures. Reviewers and audiences agreed. Undramatic, turgid, boring, not fit for the stage. Sarah had failed. I had failed, the two leading actresses of the age. We had tried to breathe life into carcasses on the beach. Well, who to blame? Who to blame? Should he blame himself or me? Maybe I, too, was an aging actress. Maybe I, too, was a fading star. Maybe I, too, was the reason his plays did not succeed. Don't you see how he worked the ruse? Whoops, lost my place there. Okay. Don't you see how he worked the ruse? It was simplicity itself. Whether he wrote while he talked to me or whether he didn't. He was the young poet. I was the younger muse. The older muse was always Sarah when we talked. And all the while he was courting Sarah to act in his play. Because his plays failed to take hold. That's why he turned on me. When the novel was actually written is not the point. He moved Sarah out of the novel. He kept himself as the young genius of future promise. He moved me into the role of the fading older muse. He needed a younger muse, you see, one who had nothing to do with his plays, one who could still present the myth of his future star. It was simple bait and switch. He didn't have to change the name, simply plant the rumors that you and the others have heard. Sarah out, and the Duse in, Duse out, another girl in. All he needed was a rumor, and people like you would do the rest. The names in the novel are Perdita, Stelio, and Donatella, as you would know. He didn't even have to change the names. Now, take these words and make them your own. None of this has come from me. If you say you're quoting me, I shall deny. Say that this was your idea, or from an undisclosed source, a close friend of Duse, speaking off the record, a wise observer of the scene, or some unattributable oracle who has divulged this information while under a spell. Okay, well, that's chapter 13. Here's chapter 14. We go a couple of pages in to the interview. What have you read? What have you read? Have you read the great roles? What would the great roles be for you? How do you read? Do you read with your eyes open? Do you read with your eyes shut? Sounds ridiculous, I know, but it's true. You must read in both these ways, both these methods, both these modes. You must read the great roles in daylight and in the dark. You must become that which you read. That which you read must become that which is you. You're an actor on a stage, an actor in a stage, and the stage is you. You're the actor and the audience. Love yourself as Lady Macbeth. Hate yourself as Lady Macbeth. Know yourself as Hedda Gabler. Wonder as Hedda Gabler just who you are. Did you not tell me that this creature, this fictional creature in the book, is feeling old, is whiny, clingy, shallow, insecure, dithering, vain, ineffectual, age-obsessed, unable to function without the aid of a male, too old for the young protagonist, too old for life itself, a spent artistic force, a shriveled Doug? Or was it told to me by someone else? No, I haven't read the novel, and it is definitely not about me. How could it be when the writer hardly knew me at all? It is a fiction, pure and simple, cut from whole cloth. He has an amazing imagination, an eagle in full flight. From a drop of water, he can make an ocean appear. And a few more pages of imagery we're leaving out. Whoops, missing a page here. No, I haven't read the novel and will never do so. What did you call it? The Flame? To read that novel would be to drink a fatal draught. But he did read passages to me when we were, let us say, on friendly terms. But not the passages that my so-called friends tell me are now, it seems, so prominent in that book. No, I don't want you to tell me about the contents of that book. I could read it myself if I choose to do so. But what I'd like to know is this. A person can steal a wallet. A person can steal a purse. We regret the loss, of course, but we don't feel that we've lost any part of ourselves. But, and here's my question, a question I'm almost afraid to ask. This is why I have opened my heart to you. We reach into a hive and remove the honey. We open a clam and extract the pearl. We pick a flower in the field and take it home. But do you believe, now tell me truly, though perhaps I won't believe you, do you believe that another person, not with a knife or a sword, but with something as simple as a book, can reach inside another person, reach into the heart, reach into the mind, and steal the way that person thinks of herself? And that's chapter 14. We go into chapter 15, a couple of pages. Well, That's all the time I have. I have other things to do. I never seem to have any leisure time. I have scripts to read. I have rehearsals I must attend. I have many things to occupy my time. I assure you that I don't sit around and hope to be interviewed. I don't think of snappy things that I can say. I'm too busy living my life to spend it that way. I don't have any tickets with me, otherwise I'd give you one, good for any play in which I can be found. I would have written a note on the back, allowing you to come backstage. Perhaps that would be the makings of an article, all by itself. People waiting to go on stage, people declaiming and sawing the air, people flopping in a chair, exhausted, when they come off. A few more pages of imagery left out, and we go to... How many people live on this earth? Have any idea how many people are living their lives as we sit here and talk? Ever imagine what they're doing? Of course, the earth is very large. Everyone on the earth is living this moment at a different time of day, kneading the dough, baking the bread, wolfing it down, buying and selling, sowing and reaping, working in the fields or in an office, in town, rowing a gondola outside this window, scribbling in a notebook as fast as one can, talking to a scribe who writes everything down. I wish I could tell you of something spectacular, of something I do that no one else does. I fall in the dust, I get up, I continue on my way. Well, as far as I'm concerned, you can write what you want. In fact, I'm sure you will. Ultimately, you see, it is nothing to me. You owe nothing to me at all. Pledges have no guarantees, no matter what anyone might say. You can take the story of Duse and make it your own. Alone, alone, alone. I go out on the stage alone. Alone when I sit in this chair and talk to you. I know the things I know, and nothing can take them away from me. I will be clutching the truth in my talons as I lie in my grave. That was chapter 15, and here's chapter 16, the final chapter of the novel and of the interview. Well, so much for your hoped-for interview. You didn't really expect me to talk. This has been for you what amounts to an empty day. What will your editor have to say? Will you be relieved of duty? Will he say you fell asleep while you were on guard? And the last two items of this interview. You can tell him your pencil broke just when I got to the interesting part. Say you'll try to remember every word I had to say. You can make it all up from scratch. None of your readers will ever know. When they've read it, they'll wrap the entrails and throw it away. So that's been, in the 3 videos, 16 chapters of interview that Duse gives or does not give. Maybe she's only imagining it, imagining a non-interview, an interview that she will not give to a young reporter. Here's a capsule summary of the history of literature over the last 4 centuries, since the death of Shakespeare and the closing of the theaters. Until that time, serious narrative literature had been composed of 2 elements. Number 1, a surface narrative with characters, setting, plots, and dialogue, and number 2, deepening imagery, whether in the epic similes of Homer, the choruses of the Greek drama, or the soliloquies of Shakespeare. Then the prose novel rose during the time of Cervantes, Defoe, Sir Walter Scott, and many, many more writers, and became the most popular form of narrative literature. By the early 20th century, there were those who regretted that the prose narrative had neglected the form that had produced classic literature, the combination of a surface narrative and deepening imagery. As a result, literature split in the early 20th century into 2 camps. Number 1, the writers of prose surface narratives, which maintained the popularity of prose novels of the 18th and 19th centuries, and number 2, the writers of poetic novels, the modernists, who emphasized deepening imagery at the expense of surface narrative, and whose novels became of interest mainly to the academic reader. So where do we in the 21st century stand? Well, I believe that the novel of surface narrative will continue to be the most popular mode of narrative writing, as it works well for the few and familiar things that it has to say. However, it lacks the capacity as a form for the depth and breadth of thematic speculation that we find in the serious literature of the past. And that limitation is why I also believe that those who wish for a form which can carry the freight of potential meaning, which the earlier forms of literature were able to heft, should search for a form, a contemporary form for the poetic novel, which will allow a writer to combine the two conventions of surface narrative and deepening imagery that the writing of serious literature requires. Now, this is the novel, Eleonora Duse, Let Me Have My Wings, a novel by John Passfield. It's on Amazon. Have a look there. It's on my publisher's website, Rocks Mills Press, ROCKSMILLSPRESS.com. Have a look there. It's also not available as a novel, but on my website, johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield.ca, there's 2 free books that you can have a look at. A planning notebook, in which I plan and write the novel, a journal in which I review the novel as I'm polishing it during the rough draft stage. So have a look then at johnpassfield.ca. And lastly, I'll say thank you for listening to this video.